The most dangerous part of this particular trek were the river crossings. Not that the water was that deep, but it was very swift moving, and of even more importance was the fact that the rocks were so slippery that no matter how careful you were, it was just inevitable that you were going to constantly be sliding and falling into the water.
Yeah, opium. This man is smoking opium.
And here's a view of the summit ridge. This is the area that we're going to be trekking to reach the aircraft wreckage of CNAC number 60. On the sides of the river, there were very dense bamboo thickets, and as you go higher, the bamboo becomes thinner in dimension, but it also becomes more difficult to get through because it's closer together.
This brace is holding up the stone.
Are you kidding?
I am not kidding. If you take out this brace, the stone come down.
I think we are died.
Everybody died. So, no touch.
Yeah.
On one of our attempts to reach the crash site from our high camp, we did get to the crash site, and then moments later a major storm blew in. The storm was so intense that my guides decided to abort the mission and down climb the river all the way back to the high camp. I had no choice but to follow them. By the time we got back to the high camp, a waterfall had materialized out of a side canyon and it washed away 2 of the tents. My tent was the only tent spared because it was on a slight rise in the ground, but the other 2 tents were washed away and all the gear was destroyed. The following day, about noontime, my guides decided that the weather was too bad to make another attempt on the crash site, so we packed up what remaining gear we had and we returned to their village. I returned to the area 2 times later in that year when the weather dried up, and during the 3rd attempt is when I finally was able to get to the crash site and spend adequate time there to document it.
Here we are. We're getting close to the base of this cliff. This is the impact zone of CNAC number 60. We left camp about a half hour ago. High camp was left about a half hour ago, and now we're proceeding up to the area of the crash site. From what I understand, it's directly ahead.
On my 3rd attempt at reaching the crash site later in the fall, I was fortunate enough to have enough good weather where I could spend adequate time documenting the wreckage site. My metal detector determined that most of the wreckage had slid down the drainage and was covered under a thick layer of rocky debris and boulders. The locals tell me that a major earthquake hit this area in 1950, and that's what caused the landslides and brought down the boulders that covered the wreckage. I did find many pieces of smaller wreckage in the drainage up high right below the vertical cliff. The key piece of evidence that identified this airplane as being CNAC number 60 was a small piece of aluminum with a 4-digit number stamped into it. When I got back home to the States, I researched that number, and it turned out to be the construction number assigned to China National Aviation Corporation aircraft number 60.